We're going to talk about the canal echocardiography. So as we were discussing about the echocardiography, it is a branch of ultrasonography. The echocardiography uses the ultrasonographic sound waves to study the heart and to generate the images. Well, this is also called as a pulse echo technique because this technique is taken from the echolocation technique, where certain animals like the bats, whales, and dolphins, they use to locate their prey and to have their prey and to in their day-to-day life. So based on this echolocation technique, the ultrasonography has come forward and it's been used in the medicine discipline, or as one of the most important diagnostic imaging technique. So echocardiography is a branch of ultrasonography that helps us to study the internal components of the heart. So this is what the echolocation is like. This is how the bats and the dolphins, they catch the prey using the echolocation technique. That is, they send the ultrasonographic waves so that they'll go and hit the prey or the target organ or the object, and they'll bounce back. So basing on this echolocation technique, they will assess how far and how distance and how's the size, everything about the prey, and they survive. So this principle was taken in toto in developing the ultrasonography. And in the present scenario in day-to-day life, both in human and veterinary medicine, the ultrasonography has formed an important basis for diagnosis, or one among the diagnostic imaging techniques, which will give us a very sensitive and very thorough means of status of the organs. So in the today's presentation, we will be talking about how this echocardiography is going to help us in identifying the cardiac diseases, particularly in pet practice. Well, I repeat, this is a branch of ultrasonography. We use the ultrasonographic waves, or the echocardiography uses the ultrasonographic waves to generate the heart. And the beauty of this echocardiography is that it will give us the live images, that will give us a real-time images, second to second, image to image. The image will be updated. That's why it is called as a real-time image that will give us while we use this echocardiography. So there are various methods of echocardiographic procedures. We call it as a two-dimensional echocardiography, or a three-dimensional echocardiography, or we call it as there is also a Doppler echocardiography or Doppler ultrasound. Various techniques and various methods are used to generate the waves, or echo waves, or echo images, or the heart images. Well, the heart structure, it will look like this externally, and internally this is what actually happening inside the heart, which we do not know exactly. The blood, whether it is flowing properly, flowing in one direction, going from one chamber to other, we don't know exactly by looking at the previous image. But this is how the echocardiography will help us to understand the various chambers inside, that will give us to study or to know about the lumen of 4 chambers, the ventricles, the atria, to understand about the motility of the interventricular septum, myocardium, motility of the walls. Even it will also help us to study or to know about the blood flow, velocities, blood flow direction, and whatnot. So many things, which is actually very much interesting. Those who are choosing the cardiac or the cardiology area as their career or future, or a part of their career. So this echocardiography is going to help us, or help you, or everyone who is interested in cardiology. So keeping this importance and the demand of cardiology in pet practitioners, in students and academicians, and many more areas. So I have chosen this echocardiography as today's presentation. So I'm going to deal about practical components of this echocardiography. I'm not going to talk anything about theory, not much about theory unless it is required. I will stress upon how this echocardiography is going to help any practitioner, any clinician, or any student to know about how to use this, and to know about how this is going to help us to diagnose various cardiac diseases. So this Echocardiography has got varied clinical applications, like it will help us to study about the various diseases of myocardium, disease of the walls, disease of the pericardium, whatnot. It will give us complete status of the functional activities of heart. That will help us to identify several acquired cardiac diseases. That will help us to diagnose several congenital cardiac diseases and also neoplasia, the cardiac tumors. And coming to the instrumentation, basic structure. So we have various types of models, sizes, and specifications. Instruments are available. If you talk about one, so this is how it looks like. It is nothing but something like a computer or a laptop, okay, which has got several controls here, and it is very much user friendly. So the images will be displayed on the screen. User friendly, something like your computer. But this instrument has got two components. One is the machine, the instrument basic, or the controls and the monitor, along with that the probe. Well, this is called as the probe or a transducer. There are several types of probes and transducers. These probes or transducers, in this advanced scenario, they are made up of piezoelectric crystals. And these piezoelectric crystals, once it is plugged in and once the probe is activated, the piezoelectric crystals, they get agitated inside, and they will generate ultrasonographic sound waves. And these sound waves, they travel from the edge of the transducer. We call it as a probe or a transducer. They come out of the transducer and they enter into the organ or the body or any animal and goes inside the body and hit one organ or multiple organs, whatever they are there, and then they come back. And these returned ultrasonographic waves, they come and display a sort of image on the monitor. This is what actually in general about the function of the ultrasonographic machine. So this is the transducer or probe. We have different types of probes. I'm not talking in general about the probes that are used for various operations or ultrasonographic diagnosis of various organs or parts of the body. I'm talking about the probes that are commonly used to diagnose cardiac disease, or the probes that are used in echocardiography. Yeah, the first one with a red tip, the probe, this transducer is called as a sector transducer or a sector probe. This is the ultimate probe we use for the cardiac, and we call it as a cardiac specific probe. And the other one is called as a microconvex probe. This also can be used as a cardiac probe. I will just let you know what is the difference between these two probes and why this is 3S, or the sector probe is considered as the most specific or the most specific cardiac probe. So this is how the ultrasonographic waves, the sound waves, they generate from the probe and they travel together. They will travel to, and they will reach into the organ or the body or any cavity. And this is the sector probe. And this is an example I'm telling you. This is an example for microconvex probe. If we use a microconvex probe, the the ultrasonographic waves, they generate from this end to this end, and they travel in this way from here to here. And if we use a sector probe, the waves, they generate from one point of the probe. So what is the difference? What happens if the waves, they generate from single point, and what happens if the waves, they generate from complete tip of the probe? This is very much important, and this is the basic for us to understand why we use the sector probe for scanning the heart. See, for example, can you able to see this? One can answer. Can you able to see this? Anybody?
Yes, sir, we can.
Right. So I'm just trying to put it in a more practical way. So I say, let us imagine that this is a probe. So this is the rib cage, and here is the heart. So we are trying to scan this, right? So usually the ultrasonographic waves, they cannot travel through the bone. So when you are going to scan the heart, we have to locate, or we have to reach the heart through the rib cage or through the thorax, from the thorax. Okay, so the thorax is made up of ribs with some sort of intercostal spaces, very narrow intercostal spaces. The space, this intercostal space differs from breed to breed. It's very narrow in case of toy breeds, maybe relatively size space in case of large and giant breeds. So when you place a probe here at the intercostal space, the space is very minimal for the waves to travel through the intercostal space. Okay, so if you are placing, if you are using a microconvex probe, the waves they generate from all the surface may not be able to travel through the intercostal space, but certain waves that are from the edges, they are being blocked by the ribs. So this will create a very unclear image when compared to the probe where the waves are starting from a single point, from a pinhole or pinpoint area, from which all the waves can able to travel through the intercostal space without any interface, without any interference for the waves to travel through. So that is the reason why if you use this sector probe, you will be going to have a very clear image because all the waves can able to travel through the intercostal space without any hindrance. Whereas the microconvex probe, there is possibility of blockage of certain waves because of narrow, particularly in case of small breed dogs, because of the narrow intercostal space where the waves can be blocked by the bones, so we cannot get a very clear image. So if you have the facility and if you have the budget, try to go for the cardiac specific sector probe. So this is the advantage of sector probe, and that's the reason why we use this only for scanning the heart. Well, coming to the table, so this is a modified table where we one edge or the one corner, one side of the table is cut open in this way, either one or two. This sort of cut is.
Dr. Satish, I would like to interrupt you.
Yeah. Tell me. Hello?
Dr. Satish, again your presentation is not visible.
Oh my God.
Again your presentation is not visible.
Presentation is visible from our side.
Hello?
Presentation is visible.
Yeah, again your presentation has gone.
Presentation is visible, but please pin the presentation. Presentation is visible.
Madam, presentation is
Visible where, sir?
Visible.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I continue?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Yes.
I worried again. Okay. So this is about the table. One side of a portion of the table is cut open for the convenient passing of the probe. We can also have a table which is cut open in this way with a cushioning effect. So this is what the table is designed for, particularly for echocardiography, because it's not like a general ultrasonography where we can do it from the dorsal side of the animal or from the above. We have to put the probe from the right parasternal approach. This is called as the right parasternal approach, which is the most common and specific way of the procedure for scanning the heart. So for this approach, we have to make the table cut open for the easy passage of the probe. So once you do in this way, the table is ready and the probe, machine is, everything is ready. And how to hold the probe? This is how you can hold the probe. It's called as a pen type of holding the probe. You can see a knob here or the notch here. Some probes, they have a knobs here, and some will have a groove here, and some will have a light here. So this is an indication. So this indicates the anterior side of the probe. So while holding the probe, either you hold in this way or this way or this way. If you hold the probe in this way, that will help us to judge where your thumb is moving and what is the direction of the probe, because this is what actually you're going to do with echocardiography. Echocardiography is something like a mind game. You don't see anything, but you can able to see so many things. It all depends upon how you hold the probe. So to hold the probe and to fix the probe at one point, there should be a marker. And this is called the marker. And some probes, they have a marker in this way. And if they have a groove, you can also hold a probe like this. So this is how you can hold the probe and put it from the right parasternal. This is called as the right parasternal approach. Once the table, probe, system, everything is ready, this is how you can able to approach from the bottom of the animal. So animal or the dog should be placed on its right lateral recumbency on the table. The hair should be properly trimmed, and all the procedures for ultrasonography what we follow should be taken care. And we should approach from the bottom. This is called as the echo window of the table, and we can approach it from this way. So once it is everything ready, now we are ready to proceed for the echocardiography. And this is what I'm talking about. So you'll be approaching it, the clinician will be approaching, and this is the right parasternal. And most of the times, except for few types of disease conditions and to study certain aspects of echocardiography, the most common, or the majority of the conditions and the majority of the views of the images, or the types of the images, or the conditions of the heart can be diagnosed through right parasternal approach. And this is what is called as the right parasternal approach. Okay. What we can able to see this, what happens if the dog is placed on this way and the probe is placed here, what is going to happen? So this is what. So when the dog is lying on its right lateral recumbency and the probe is placed here, the heart will be located in this way, and you can able to scan the heart. And the scan, or the heart scanning, or the ultrasonographic waves that are coming out from the probe will be giving you various images based upon where the wave is traveling through. Okay. So this is the way of approach to carry out the echocardiography. And coming to the echocardiographic views, what does it mean actually, the long axis view? There are so many things to say that there are long axis view, short axis view. What is this view, and what is actually happening when the ultrasonographic waves that travel through the heart? So for a practical application, I just want to make it in this way. So if you say that, if you all feel that this is an heart, so we are, putting a probe here. So this is there in the thoracic cavity. So we are putting it here at the intercostal space. And this is the transducer. So once you contact the transducer with the thorax or the intercostal space, the waves they travel through and they reach to this, and they will dissect, actually they will cut the heart. Okay, so they will cut the heart either cross-sectionally, they will cut the heart longitudinally. If the heart is cut through the longitudinal section, we call it as long axis view. Say for example, this is a heart. So if the probe is placed here, and if we are cutting it on longitudinal section, so the heart will be sliced in this way. Okay, and this portion, once the heart is sliced, and this portion is displayed on your monitor like this. And suppose if the heart is sliced cross-sectionally, okay, if the heart is like this, and if it is sliced cross-sectionally, and this portion of the heart is displayed on the monitor. So it all depends upon the place where the heart is sliced. Okay, let us imagine that this is a heart, this is the apex and the base. So apex is ventricles, both left and right ventricles, and here both left and right atria. So if you are longitudinally sectioning it with the ultrasound waves, so what we can see here is, if you are slicing through in the middle, you can see the ventricles and the atria. And suppose if you are cross-section, if it is sectioning it across, and if it is sectioned at the ventricles, you can see the ventricle view. If you section it at the atria, you can see the atrial view. And if you section it at the aortic area, you can see the aortic view. So this is all about what we see on the monitor. So it is the sliced image that is displayed on the monitor. So this is how, this is also called as, this is what we are talking about, the long axis view, the longitudinal section of the heart. So heart is sliced here with the probe, the ultrasonic waves, they slice the heart, and the sliced portion is displayed in this way. So we have various different types of long axis views. This is what is called as the longitudinal section of the heart. If it is viewed, it is called as a long axis view. Always remember this. So the long axis views, we have several long axis views. That means it all depends upon where the probe is slicing the heart, where the ultrasonographic waves are slicing the heart. Suppose if it is slicing at this portion, we can see the left ventricle, right ventricle, atrium, etc. And if we are coming slightly upwards, the image will be different. And if it is still coming upwards, the image will be further different. That means that is what I'm talking about. This is something like the probe that is playing the game. Okay, so it is the direction of the probe you will be modifying the image. The movement of the probe will give you a modified image there. Okay, so let us see in detail about what are the long axis views. So this is the position of the animal, dog, on the table, head towards this side and tail towards this side. This is the right parasternal approach, and the clinician or the examiner or the sonographer is approaching from the bottom of the right side. This is called as the right parasternal approach. So the transducer position to obtain this right parasternal approach is long axis approach, is a 4-chamber approach. So the beam should be slightly oblique. So look at this. This is a probe. So we are slightly making the probe oblique in this way. So this is an oblique approach. Once the probe or the transducer is placed in this oblique manner, the waves can slice the heart in this way, and the image generated will look like this. So this is how we can start with. To start with the echocardiographic image, start with by keeping the probe not straight but slightly oblique, aiming towards the spine. Okay, so in this long axis view, this is the left ventricle, and this is the left atrium, the right ventricle, and the right atrium. This is called as the 4-chamber longitudinal section or the long axis view of the heart. Okay, so now from this oblique position, slightly bring to more vertical position. So look at this view to this view. Here, the transducer is placed slightly vertical. And once it is brought to slightly vertical position, we have another part to that entered into our image. So apart from right atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle, and left atrium, we have an aorta. This is called as a left ventricle outflow tract. So this image is a 5-chamber view, including the aorta, and this image is called as a 4-chamber view. This is also called as a left and right ventricle inflow tract, and this image can also be termed as a left ventricle outflow tract. So this is possible. How to change from this image to this image? It's very simple. See, instead of putting it in oblique way, if you slightly bring it to a more vertical position, the image direction will be changing, and you'll be giving a different kind of image. That's what I told you. This is all the game that is playing between the probe and your mind. Okay, so always keep in mind, you should have a gross anatomical idea, anatomy of the heart idea, where the ventricles are present, atria is present, what is actually aorta, where it is from starting, and what is entering into the left atrium, what is entering into the right atrium. So all this anatomy is very much important for anybody to understand this echocardiography. So with simple change in the position or the direction of the probe, we can switch over from 4-chamber long axis view to 5-chamber long axis view. Yeah, then coming to the short axis view, this is something looking like a fish piece here, but it is not fish. This is the cross section of the heart. So the heart is sliced here and it is viewed for us. So what is this? This is the left ventricle and this is the right ventricle, and it is interventricular septum. So when you put a probe here in this direction, and the image that develop at this point will give you 2 important parts of the heart, the left and the right ventricle. So again, the same, it depends upon where you are slicing it. Say, for example, if the probe is placed here and the ultrasonographic waves, they pass through here, the image generated will give you only the ventricle. And if it is passed from here, the image generated will give you the papillary muscles. If it is passed through here, it will give us atrioventricular valves. If it is passed from here, it will give you the aorta and the pulmonary artery, etc. So it all depends upon where the probe is placed. So the probe will be placed at one point, and 2 things you'll be doing here. You will be rotating the probe. So rotation. Okay, so this is the rotation. Either you will be rotating the probe or you will be moving the probe. It is called as fanning the probe. Okay, so this is the fanning. This movement is the fanning, and this movement is the rotation. Always keep in mind, while doing the fanning movement, see, the tip should be placed in a fixed position. If you are moving the probe from this position to this position, only the tail should be moved away, but not the tip. If you move this in this direction, this is wrong. So the tip should be intact at one point, at one intercostal space, and the tail should be moved. So this is called as the fanning movement, and this is called as the rotation. So with these two simple movements, you can able to generate multiple views of heart on echocardiography. Well, so this was the position where we have left with one's initial position is slightly oblique, placing towards the spine, and we have come to slightly vertical in position. And from here, the transducer is rotated to 90 degrees. Okay, so here from that position, transducer is rotated to 90 degrees. When the transducer is rotated to 90 degrees, and when it is moved front and back, and otherwise when it is tilted or fanned from to and fro, it will generate multiple short axis view images. These are called as the short axis view images. This is what we have seen as a fish piece. So the left ventricle, this is the left ventricle lumen, and these two are the papillary muscles, posterior papillary muscle, anterior papillary muscle, and this above one is the right ventricle. So this is a typical shape of mushroom. We call it as a mushroom shape appearance of the left ventricle. This is one view, what we can see. We call it as a short axis papillary muscle view. And if you slightly move or the tilt the probe or the transducer, we will reach to the mitral valve area. So this is again the same, the left ventricle. But here what we see in the middle is the mitral valve. These are the two mitral valves. This is the anterior mitral valve, and this is the posterior mitral valve. The mitral valve will look like the shape of a fish mouth. So that's why it is called as a fish mouth appearance. So this is what we can see on the short axis. Then coming to, now we are in the short axis view, and we have turned it to 90 degrees and slightly we are moving. And now what we are doing is we are just slightly moving forward. If we slightly move forward in the same position, we can able to see the 5-chamber view. We can able to see the 5-chamber view, and here the right ventricle, we can also see the walls. This is also called as a right ventricle outflow tract. Okay, so we have moved slightly forward. Now initially we were at the ventricles, and now we slightly moved back forwards towards the base of the heart, where we have reached the mitral area, and still further we have moved forward where we have reached the aorta and other outflow tract areas. So this is called as short axis right ventricle outflow tract. Now what we have is apical view, and so far we have seen the long axis views and the short axis view. So long axis is we are slicing the heart longitudinally, short axis views or we are slicing the heart cross-sectionally. Now we are going to see the heart from the apex of the heart. So the probe is placed here at the apex, and once the probe is placed here, we can able to see the heart from this direction completely. So this is called as an apical view, and to reach to this apical view more clearly, we have to shift the animal. Instead of doing it from right parasternal approach, we have to do it from left approach. Okay, so slightly if you go to the left side, if you place the transducer at the level of the apex of the heart. So this is at the apex of the heart. If you place the transducer at the apex of the heart, we can able to see the apical view at the 4th chamber. So here this is the apex. This is where the transducer is placed. Left ventricle, the right ventricle, right atrium, and the left atrium. So the waves, they are traveling from the apex reaching towards the base of the heart. Same thing if you slightly rotate to 30 degrees from this position to this position, we can able to see the aorta. Apart from the left and right ventricles and the atria, we can able to see the outflow tract of the left ventricle, which is the aorta. So it is simple movement of the probe will give us various components. We can able to see the various structures inside the heart. So this is apical 4-chamber view, and this is apical 5-chamber view, which can be viewed from the apex of the heart on the left side. So from this position, we were in this position If you slightly come to this, that means we have moved the probe to still perpendicular 90 degrees in this direction. Once we move the probe to this direction, what we can see is we can able to see only two chamber, only the left ventricle and the left atrium. Why actually we have to look into these many views? What happens if we examine only one view? See, for example, if you look at one view, we may be missing the other areas or other parts of the heart where the pathology is present. Some may have a left atrial problem, some may have a right atrial problem, some may have a ventricular problem, and some may have the valves problem with the atrioventricular valves, or some may be with the aortic valves. So while carrying out the echocardiography, while you're going to examine the heart using the echocardiography, it is very much important to scan the complete part of the heart, complete portions of the heart one by following these imaging methods or methodologies. Okay. Well, probably it looks like complicated for the learners, particularly for the students. So if you feel that what is this 90 degrees, 70 degrees, clockwise, anti-clockwise, if you think that it is looking complicated, simply feel the cardiac impulse. Put the animal on right lateral recumbency on the table, right side towards the bottom. Okay, feel the cardiac impulse, locate the cardiac impulse with your palm and put the probe. Okay, something you can able to see definitely if you place the probe at the maximum cardiac impulse. So from there you start searching for the various other components. As I told you, with two different moments. One is the rotation, the other one is the tilting or the fanning. So by doing these things, you can able to do magic with echocardiography. Well, what are the various echocardiographic modes and their clinical applications? As we were talking about, this echocardiography has got a B mode echocardiography, has got an M mode echocardiography, has got a Doppler echocardiography. And these are the three things every one of us or any cardiologist is supposed to do while looking for the cardiac abnormality or any cardiac disease. Well, what is this B mode echocardiography? The term B defines the brightness. This is also called as the brightness mode. Here, the pathology of the organ, the pathology of the structure can be defined or diagnosed or confirmed based upon the change in the brightness of the organ or the tissue. So that's the reason why it is called as the brightness mode. So this is diagnosed based upon the difference in the echogenic texture of the organ. So if you see this, there are 2 or 3 different shades of echogenicity. We call it as more white color, wherever you see it is called as the hyperechogenicity. Completely black color where you see is called as anechogenicity. This is anechoic and this is hyperechoic. And wherever you see the gray color texture, this is called as hypoechoic. Hyperechoic means more number of echogenic waves are traveling back and more number of waves are traveled back, returned back and are displayed on the monitor. If more waves are traveled back and displayed on the monitor, that will give you a more white color of image, which is called as more bright image, and that more bright image is called as hyperechoic image. Okay, and if some waves are absorbed and some are returned back, say for example some 40-50%, 60% waves are returned back, that will give you a little bit less brightened waves or brightened image, which is of gray color image, which is called as hypoechoic image. And suppose if almost 90% of the waves that are absorbed inside and no waves are turned back or very few waves are turned back, so that is called as an anechoic. And so these are the 3 different terms we use commonly while dealing with ultrasonography. That may be hyperechoic or maybe hypoechoic or anechoic. So depending upon this hyperechogenicity or hypoechogenicity or anechogenicity of the image that is present on the display or the monitor, if we can able to decide the disease, or if we can able to confirm the disease, and this kind of mode is termed as the brightness mode, because we are going to confirm the case, we are going to diagnose the case based upon the change in the brightness of the image. Okay, let us see. So again, B mode can be either short axis B mode or can be a long axis B mode. So we are not bothered about axis here, that is all done there. So what is this B mode short axis image? So when the heart is sliced at this portion, as I was talking about, if they are the ventricles and if they are the atria and if this is the mitral area. So when the heart is sliced here, what we can able to see here is the left ventricle and probably in some sort of the ventricle of the right side of the right ventricle. So if we can able to, if we slice it at the mitral area, what we can see is the mitral valves. And if we can able to slice, if the probe is slicing at the atrial level, we can able to see the atria. So it all depends upon where the probe is placed and where the waves are passing through and which portion of the heart is being sliced. So in general, B mode image, generally it will give us a short axis B mode image where we can see the left ventricle. This is the left ventricle. This is interventricular septum, and this is left ventricle lumen. What we were talking about is the mushroom shaped, and the P, this is the papillary muscles, anterior and posterior papillary muscles, and this is the right ventricle. So if we imagine and if we see that normally a non-pathological heart should have a short axis view in this way. Okay, let's see what are the abnormalities, what we can able to see. And look at this. This is almost a round shaped globose ventricle. So this is a dilation of the left ventricle, and this image indicates that the dog or the cat is suffering with dilatation of the ventricles. So if we notice this kind of image, we call it as a dilated cardiomyopathy. Here, the interventricular septum is very thin relatively, and there is no clear papillary muscles are not properly seen, and that kind of typical mushroom shape appearance is missing. So this is something like a globus round. So one of the indications of DCM. So this is another case where you can see the mushroom shape appearance here, the left ventricle, but we can see very prominent right ventricle. So this is again a dilatation of the right ventricle. And now look at this. Look at the lumen. This is the left ventricle lumen. Look at the lumen here in this image, and look at the lumen here in this image. And look at the myocardium here in this image. Look at the myocardium here in this image. Okay, so look at the myocardium here in this image. So the myocardium is very much thick here, and the lumen of the left ventricle is very much narrow, thin, I mean decreased. So this is opposite to this. This is a dilated cardiomyopathy, and this is a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. There is a hypertrophy of the left ventricle. And now here you can see the left ventricle lumen and the right ventricle lumen, the interventricular septum. Slightly we can see the papillary muscles, a little bit appearance of mushroom shaped. But what is actually addition to this? You can see some black colored space around the heart. This is anechoic space around the heart, and this is nothing but the pericardial effusion. So if we come across this kind of abnormalities, these are few, and I'm talking about these are the few of cardiac abnormalities what we can able to identify or diagnose based on B mode short axis. So these abnormal findings, if you compare that with the normal, this is how we can able to differentiate. Okay. Then coming to the B mode long axis view here. See, while going through the long axis, I told you and we were discussing about that we can able to see 4 chambers, 2 atria, the 2 ventricles, the mitral, and the tricuspid wall. So if you think that, if you imagine that this is a normal image, look at this. So here the ventricle, the left ventricle and the left atrium is much dilated compared to the right side. So this is one finding of dilated cardiomyopathy, where there is dilatation of the left atrium and the ventricles. And this is another one where you can see complete dilatation of the left heart, the left ventricle and the left atrium, and you can also see the dilated pulmonary artery. So the pulmonary vessel that is entering into the left atrium is also much dilated, giving a pulmonary hypertension. So this is another one where we can see the 5-chamber view. This is the right side of the heart, right atrium and the right ventricle, the tricuspid wall here. And this is the left atrium, and this is the left ventricle, but something is coming out from the left ventricle, which is the aorta. So you can also see the aortic walls here, which is called the aortic cusps. Okay, the semilunar walls. So this is called as a 5-chambered long axis view, and this is also called as left ventricle outflow tract. So image showing left ventricle outflow tract. View. This is the dilated cardiomyopathy, and this is the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So this is how the lumen will become so narrow when compared to the dilated cardiomyopathy, and the myocardium becomes so thick and here hypertrophic. So this is the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and the dilated cardiomyopathy. And here, this is the left atrium and the mitral wall, the left ventricle, and this is the right ventricle here. But this right ventricle, if it is a normal right ventricle, it should look like this, or at least like this, depending upon the contrast of the monitor or the image. But this is giving some sort of different appearance, echogenic texture. So this is nothing but either that must be a clot or that must be a tumor, but it looks like more tumor. So this is a tumor that is present in the right atrium. So this is how we can able to differentiate the tumor or masses, okay, or any pathology that is present inside the heart. So this can never be diagnosed if we do this with X-ray or ECG. So this is the significance of ultrasonography or echocardiography to identify the internal structures of the heart. So this is again a normal image for us to compare. Then coming to the motion mode. Well, this is about the next mode is motion mode. Previously, what we have seen is a B mode based upon the change in the echogenic texture of a tissue. We can able to differentiate or identify the pathology. Here it is the motion mode. What is the basic difference between a B mode and a motion mode? B mode will give heart will be sliced a single wave every time the single wave is passed through, and that will generate an image and which will be displayed on the monitor. Whereas in motion mode, the continuous waves will be traveling through, and at every split second, the wave will be updated. And the updation is according to the movement or the motion of the organ or the tissue. So that's why it is called as the motion mode. So what is required for a motion mode echocardiography or M mode echocardiography is we want a basic B mode. So once we locate a B mode, and we have to decide which area the heart has to be sliced. So when in this image, the heart is sliced through the left ventricle, okay, in this way. And once it is sliced here, once the image is sliced, so it will generate image in this way. So this is M mode echocardiography. So what is the advantage of this M mode echocardiography over the B mode echocardiography? So B mode will give you the gross appearance of, or it will give you the qualitative, whether there is an increase in size of the chamber, whether there is thickness of the septum or the myocardium is increased or decreased, or whether there is any presence of fluid within the pericardial sac. So it will give us only whether there is or not. But whereas M mode echocardiography will let us to define how much. Okay, so this is the quantitative analysis. For the quantitative analysis of the ventricular dimensions, quantitative analysis of atrial dimensions. So this will give us how thick the ventricle myocardium was, and what is how much the the lumen of the ventricle is dilated, how much the lumen of the ventricle has narrowed. So this will give us the qualitative, quantitative assessment for the cardiac chambers. So we can take M mode echocardiography by slicing that in this way at the left ventricle, or we can also take it from the mitral wall to study the mitral wall pathology. Okay, so what is that we are going to see in this? So once we take a M mode image, so the heart is sliced in this way and it will be displayed like this. So what is very much important here is to identify the structures of the heart. See, the probe is here. This is the point where the waves they start from, and it reaches to the heart and going down. Okay, so once it is sliced, the heart is sliced here and it is displayed. So the contracting heart, once it is sliced, is displayed for you in this way with a sliced section. So the first one, what we can see here, it is the right ventricle wall, very close to the probe. So this is the right ventricle wall, and very narrow right ventricle lumen, the black color, anechoic area. Same thing here. Okay, and next to that is interventricular septum. So this is the interventricular septum, and inside that is the left ventricle lumen. This is the left ventricle lumen, and this is the left ventricle free wall and the pericardium, the left ventricle free wall and the pericardium. So this is how the structures that are displayed on the monitor when we apply an M mode echocardiography. So here, what we will be going to do with, what we do with this actually is like we'll be going to assess the thickness of various components of the heart, starting from the interventricular septum to the lumen and the ventricular posterior wall, both at the diastole and the systole. Okay, so they will be evaluated, they will be measured both at diastole and the systole. So this is not exactly measured at the diastole or at the systole. They are not measured exactly at the peak of the diastole or at the peak of the systole. This should be a take-home message for everyone here. So they should be measured at the end diastole and at the end systole. That's why they are called as interventricular septum at end diastole, interventricular septum at end systole, left ventricle internal diameter at the left at the end diastole and systole, like that. So they should never be measured at the peak of the diastole or the peak of the systole. So if you look at this, the interventricular septum, this is the systolic phase. The kink is the systolic phase, and this is the diastolic phase. Okay, so this will be the peak of the systole, and this is the end of the systole and the start of the diastole. So when we talk about interventricular septum at end systole, it should be pointed here. And when we talk about the end diastole, not at the peak of the diastole, but at the end of the diastole. So this is the end diastole, and this is end systole for all the three: interventricular septum, left ventricle internal diameter, and posterior wall. Yeah, just like B mode, or we can also slice the heart while carrying out the M mode. So we can take the M mode measurements by slicing the heart in the short axis view, or we can also take the M mode measurements by slicing the heart on its long axis view. We can take from the ventricles, we can take it from the atrioventricular valve area. We can also come little back and we can see the left atrium measurements here. We can also see the left atrium and the aorta measurement. So it all depends upon which portion we would like to examine. And again, I repeat, we have to examine all these things. So one by one after the other, we have to check the heart portions, starting from complete ventricle portion to coming back till the base of the heart, that is up to the aorta and the left atrium. Well, let us see what are certain M mode abnormalities. So far we have seen previously on short axis view, we have seen there is dilatation of the left ventricle and the heart is looking like a globo structure. Now that portion of the heart is sliced, and that is what we can able to see on this M mode, where the heart is giving you a motion pathway of both the ventricles and the interventricular septum, everything along with the lumen. So this is how it looks like. It may not be very clear. Yeah, it will be looking like this. So the same thing, what you can just recollect, may not be the same image, but partially globose heart with only one posterior papillary muscle is very clearly visible than compared to the right papillary muscle. And loss of that typical mushroom shape appearance. When this was taken, or when this is taken for M mode echocardiography, it will generate image like this. So as we were talking previously, so this will be the right ventricle wall, and this is right ventricle lumen, this is interventricular septum, and this is left ventricle lumen, and this is left ventricle posterior wall. So look at this space or the dimension or the lumen of the left ventricle, which is very much increased, and this is again associated with very thin interventricular septum and also very less systolic appearance of the interventricular septum. So this is how we can able to quantify. So what we do here, we will do all the measurements of left ventricle lumen starting from interventricular septum. These are the measurements we follow. We have different formulas to calculate all these things. And what is going to happen when we do this M-mode echocardiography? When we do this M-mode echocardiography, we can able to quantify these values, and we can end up with calculating the cardiac output. We can end up with calculating ejection fraction. We can end up with calculating fractional shortening actually. And these are the three important things that will help us to identify and confirm the functional status of the heart. Among all these three, the most important thing is ejection fraction and the fractional shortening. So the ejection fraction and the fractional shortening, that will decide the functional capacity of the heart. And based upon those values, we can say that whether the animal is going to have a congestive heart failure, or we can also decide the prognosis of the case. Okay, and we can adjust the dose requirements, and we can study the efficacy of the dose of the treatment. So these are the very many things, practical applications we can do while we reach to the M-mode echocardiography when compared to the B-mode echocardiography. Well, so that is one what we have studied previously about the left ventricle dimensions, and this is about another image of the M-mode echocardiography. When we compare this with this image, this is a qualitative description where we can see the left and the right ventricle lumen appears to be same, and I say that this is the dilatation of the right ventricle. If you remember this image, previous slide, that where we have studied about the B-mode short axis view. So same thing when it is put for M-mode echocardiography, we can see almost the same, similar sized of the right and the left ventricle, indication suggestive of right heart failure. And this is again the same what we have seen on the B-mode image, where there is a thickening of interventricular septum with the lumen very much less. The same thing here. So if we can able to view clearly, you can see the ejection fraction here, fractional shortening here, and the ejection fraction, fractional shortening. So these are the two important things which we can able to depend upon to say the prognosis of the heart failure case. So this is how we can able to quantify how much of the cardiac function is available with a particular patient. Yes, apart from those, the lumen dimensions and coming up with ejection fraction and fractional shortening, we can also identify, we can also study the thickness of the pericardium, pericardial sac. This anechoic area here, this is nothing but the accumulation of the pericardium within the pericardial fluid within the pericardial sac. So this is called as the pericardial effusion. And this pericardial effusion, we can able to identify how much, centimeters of the pericardium fluid is being accumulated there, and that will also help us to study the prognosis of the pericardial effusion. If it is more, it will result in diastolic dysfunction and it will result in cardiac tamponade. So these things can be assessed by looking at the M-mode echocardiography. So here, another facility to study on M-mode echocardiography is the distance between the interventricular septum and the anterior mitral wall leaflet here. So this is interventricular septum and this is anterior mitral wall leaflet. If you see that here in this strip, this is the interventricular septum and these are the tip of the anterior mitral wall leaflets. So the distance between these two, interventricular septum and the anterior mitral wall leaflet, is called as endpoint septal separation. This is shortly called as EPSS, which is also important for us to study and to assess when we are going to diagnose with dilated cardiomyopathy. And now, not only this, the pericardial effusion, not only the lumen dimensions, and not only the the distance or endpoint septal separation, but we can also study we can also study the mitral valve. We can see the movement of the mitral valve. We can see the closure and opening of the mitral valve on the M-mode on this echocardiography. This is a long axis view where the left ventricle and the left atrium with the mitral valve closed here. So this is a pre-systolic or the systolic phase where the mitral valve is completely closed. So if you think that this as a normal mitral valve appearance, so we can see this like these kind of abnormalities. You can see the kink. You can see it can be a prolapse of the posterior mitral valve leaflet, and there is a kinking of the anterior mitral valve leaflet. So when there is these kind of abnormalities we notice on long axis or short axis view or apical view, is also an indication not to confirm that there is going to be a mitral valve disease, and probably ultimately it will end up with congestive heart failure. So this is what I mean to say that the echocardiography is superior when compared to the ultrasonography, ECG and X-ray. So this will help us to be very specific and clear about the diagnosis of the cardiac diseases, whether it is the myocardial disease or whether it is the pericardial disease or whether it is a valvular disease. Yes, another important feature of the echocardiography, this is the short axis view. We can also measure the left atrium and the aorta. This is the left atrium aorta ratio, which will again give us a clue or the confirmation about the dilated cardiomyopathy. So we have very few important diseases of cardiovascular system in case of pets, the dogs and the cats, like dilated cardiomyopathy, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, valvular disease, mitral valve, or degenerative mitral valve disease, or pericardial disease. So these many diseases, apart from the various congenital cardiac diseases, so all these things can be very, very specifically identified and confirmed if we use this echocardiography as a diagnostic tool. Then coming to the Doppler echocardiography, this is a bit more advanced kind of echocardiography. Here, usually the Doppler echocardiography, it uses the Doppler effect to the ultrasonographic images of the tissues. It will give us the movement of the tissues. It will give us the movement of body fluids. Okay, so that is the reason why we use this Doppler echocardiography mostly to study the blood flow parameters. This will help us to identify the direction of the flow of the blood, and it also helps us to identify the velocity of the blood flow. So the blood flow parameters or the blood flow studies is possible by using Doppler echocardiography. So this Doppler echocardiography, it is based upon the principle. It is based upon the principle that the change in the frequency or the direction of the sound waves as the source and the object, they move either towards each other or they move away from each other. So this is the simple Doppler physics that we apply in this diagnostic imaging technique. So what we call it as Doppler echocardiography. There are 2 or 3 different types of Doppler echocardiography procedures, what we normally follow here. One among that is the pulsed wave Doppler. Here, the pulsed wave Doppler is nothing but the waves, the ultrasonographic waves that travel in pulse manner from the transducer. They reach the target organ and then come back as a pulse and received by the transducer, which is displayed as an image. So here, the image that is started, the pulse that is started and received by the same crystal that is present within the transducer. And whereas the continuous wave Doppler, here the waves are continuously generated and they are continuously being taken back. And this is the basic difference between the continuous wave Doppler and the pulse wave Doppler. But these two have the similar kind of significance or application in diagnosing cardiovascular disease. And as we were talking about that, the Doppler echocardiography is used to study the movement of the tissues and the movement of the blood in the vessels, the direction of blood flow. So this is very commonly used and most useful it is in to study the valvular diseases, and it is also useful to study septal defects. Also useful to study certain congenital cardiac abnormalities. So for all these disease diagnosis, for all these types of cardiac disease diagnosis, we follow either the pulse wave Doppler or the continuous wave Doppler. Apart from this, what we have is the most sophisticated color flow Doppler. So here, the color flow pattern, the flow pattern of the color, whether it is flowing in one direction or whether it is going in another direction, or whether it is coming with one or two different colors, or whether it is a mixing up of colors. So these things will help us to identify the pathology present at the mitral valves, or pathology associated with the flow pattern of the blood within the blood vessels, or at the valvular level. So let us see what this pulse wave Doppler will help us. It will help us to diagnose these certain diseases. So as we were talking about, let us, if we imagine that this has a normal mitral valve, it is closed properly during the systolic phase. And look at this image, what we have seen previously, whether where there is kinking and prolapse of the posterior mitral valve leaflet. So what happens when the mitral valve becomes like this? What happens when the mitral valve prolapse is there? What happens when there is a kinking of the mitral valve, or what happens in general when there is the pathology of the mitral valve? So we all know that this acts as a gate valves. When there is a diastolic phase, blood from the atrium enters into the ventricles, and when there is a systolic phase, the mitral valve is closed here on the left side. On the right side, the tricuspid valves are closed, and the blood gushes into the major vessels, the aorta and the pulmonary artery. So the valve should be properly and completely closed when there is a systolic phase. The atrioventral valves should be properly and completely closed whenever there is systolic phase. And at the same time, the major valves or the semilunar valves that are present at the aorta and the pulmonary artery should also be closed whenever there is a diastolic activity. So this is the routine way of closure and opening of the valves that will happen whenever there is systolic and diastolic activity. So the valves, they close in such a way that the blood will never come back into the atria when there is a systolic phase. So this is possible only when the mitral valve health is perfectly all right, when there is the elasticity of the mitral valve is not lost, when the contour is not lost, when there is complete coaptation. Okay, so everything, if it is remaining within its health level, so they will be properly shut down and the blood will not come back from ventricle to the atrium. But whenever there is a pathology of the valves, that may be a mitral valve, or that may be a tricuspid valve, or that may be any semilunar valve. So when there is a pathology like that, may be either prolapse or kinking or degeneration, or fibrosis or scarring. So any of these pathology will make incomplete closure of these two valves, incomplete closure of the mitral or the tricuspid or whatever valves that is affected. So whenever there is incomplete closure, when there is a systolic phase, apart from blood that is going into the major vessels, a portion of the blood also comes back into the atria. That may be, if mitral valves are damaged, the blood gets back into the left atrium. If tricuspid valves are damaged, the blood gushes back into the right atrium. So this is what is called as regurgitation of blood. That means the blood from the ventricles, they are coming back into atria. So this coming back of blood from ventricles to atria is called regurgitation. When this regurgitation continues for a longer period, this leads to further complications, and ultimately it will end up with congestive heart failure. So to study this, to identify this, to see this, whether there is regurgitation or not, we use this Doppler echocardiography. So when we place the gate, this is called as the gate or the valve of the pulse wave. So when you place this valve or the gate, so if you look at here, you can see not much pathology of the mitral valve, but when you place this pulse wave Doppler here, you can see this wave pattern. This is called as the turbulence pattern. This is called as the turbulence jet appearance of the mitral valve. So when this turbulence jet is present, this indicates that there is a regurgitation of the blood. Why? What is actually causing the turbulence to occur here. So as I was talking about, this all depends upon the Doppler echocardiography and the Doppler mechanism. The Doppler physics depends upon the distance they are coming together and going away between the source and the object. Here, I was telling you that this is the tip of the probe from where the waves they start and they travel in this direction. Okay, so the blood, this is the left atrium and this is the left ventricle. And when there is a diastolic phase, blood from left atrium enters into the left ventricle. And whenever there is a systolic phase, blood from left ventricle goes into the aorta. Of course, it is not seen here, but it should not come back here. So what is actually happening here? The probe remains the same. It is in a standing position, stationary, but the blood that is moving here is sometimes it is going towards the probe and sometimes it is going away from the probe. Okay, so this should be an one-way directional flow. The blood should go from left atrium into the left ventricle, and when there is systole, it should go from left ventricle into the aorta. So it should be like a cyclical flow. Blood comes towards the probe and go away from the probe. Comes towards the probe, go away from the probe. So this, when the blood or the RBCs or the cells within the blood, they are traveling in this direction, this will generate a wave which is called as an ultrasonographic wave, which is called as a pulse wave. Okay, so the waves that are positively amplitude are nothing but the waves that are result from the flow of blood towards the probe. Okay, that means when the blood is coming from atria to the ventricles, if it is flowing in this direction, we have a positive amplitude. And when the blood is going into the major vessels, the aorta, so it is going away from the probe, that will generate a negative wave. Okay, so a positive and a negative wave. So when there is a one-way flow, we have a clear positive and a negative amplitude without any overlapping of these wavy patterns. But when there is a flow of blood, not in single direction, but it is coming in this direction in a diastolic phase, but when systole is happening, it is also going back against the flow of the blood. So there is a mixing of the blood. There is a flow which is not continuous and which is not in a single direction, but it is a multi-directional flow of the blood back into the vessels and back into the aorta or the atrium. So this kind of multi-directional flow of blood, which is possible when there is mitral disease, will give you this kind of exaggerated graphy pattern or appearance of the turbulence, which is called as the turbulence jet appearance. So the turbulence jet appearance, which will not only give us the graphic pattern indicating that there is turbulence jet, indicate a suggestive of mitral valve disease, it also help us to, it will also give us to study the blood volume, which is flowing through the mitral valve. So this is the advantage of pulse wave Doppler. If you notice the turbulence jet at a particular valve, say let us a metal or the tricuspid valve, so that is an indication, or that almost confirms that there is valvular disease. When coming to the color flow Doppler, this is again, as we were talking about, this also depends upon the direction of the flow. So we have a color image here with a red color appearance of color, and here we have some sort of bluish color appearance. So what is the difference between these two? As we have seen previously, when the blood is coming towards the probe, it will give a positive amplitude. When the blood is going away, it will give us a negative amplitude. So same thing, when we have a probe here, when the blood is coming towards the probe, it will give you a red color image. When the blood is going away from the probe, it will give you a blue color image. It's very simple. And most of the times, we usually think that the blue indicates impure blood, red indicates a pure blood. But in echocardiography or the color flow Doppler, it is not that. So when the blood is flowing towards the probe, see, this is the probe here, the point of probe, and this is left ventricle, and this is left atrium. So in the mitral valve, the blood is coming from left atrium through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. So it is flowing towards the probe. So because it is flowing towards the probe, it will give a red color image. Here, the blood is going into the pulmonary artery here. So this is the right ventricle. It is called the right ventricle outflow tract. It is going to the pulmonary artery. So that means the blood is going away from the probe. This is the tip of the probe, and it is going away from the probe. That's why it is giving you the blue color appearance of the jet. So this presence of either red or blue, depending upon the flow direction, is nothing but normal flow, but we have a color here. We have a blue here, we have a red, orange, yellow, green, a mixture of colors are noticed here. What does it indicate actually? Just like the turbulence flow, what we have seen with the pulse wave Doppler. If the blood is flowing in one direction, that will either give you a red color or a blue color. But here, if the blood is going in more than one direction, if it is going into the ventricles and then coming back into the atria, so when there is multiple ways or the directions of the blood that is flowing through the wall, that will give us more than one color, which is called as a mosaic pattern appearance. So when we notice turbulence jet on pulse wave Doppler and a mosaic pattern appearance on color flow Doppler, that is an indication of the confirmation of valvular disease. We have another image here. This is the right corner image, where is a B mode image where we can see the left atrium and the left ventricle with the mitral valve. It looks not exactly normal, but we can say that there is something wrong with this mitral valve. There is something diseased or degeneration with this mitral valve, but we don't know whether there is regurgitation or not. To see the regurgitation or to see the presence or the confirmation of the regurgitation, we have to use this color flow Doppler. So when we apply this color flow Doppler, we can see a mosaic pattern appearance here in the mitral valve area. So that indicates that there is regurgitation of blood from left ventricle to the left atrium. So this is the advantage of the color flow Doppler, which confirms the valvular diseases. Not only that, see, this is a B mode image where we have a left atrium, the left ventricle, right atrium, and the right ventricle. This is an atrioventricular septum, but which is supposed to be continuous, but this atrioventricular septum is incomplete. Okay, so there is a breakage in this atrioventricular septum, which is interatrial septum, which is called as an atrial septal defect. So we can see, of course, clearly here, there is an atrial septal defect, which is a congenital abnormality. But the same thing what we can see here as a defect, as a discontinuity of the atrial septum, that can be confirmed by the color flow Doppler. So color flow, so usually again, because of multi-directional flow of the blood, it will generate a mosaic pattern or a multiple colored image, which is an indication of multi-directional flow of the blood, not from a normal location. So this is a confirmation of atrial septal defect. It also gives a confirmation about the ventricular septal defect. So this is the right ventricle, the left ventricle, interventricular septum. There is a septal defect here. So when you apply color flow Doppler, we have a clear blue color, images where the blood is flowing in one direction, but we have a mixing up of the color here at the defect portion, confirming a ventricular septal defect. This color flow Doppler also helps us to identify, as I was talking about congenital disease like septal defects, it also helps us to identify patent ductus arteriosus, where we have a lateral the left pulmonary artery, and the descending aorta, where there is septal defect. When there is a septal defect, we can see a mosaic pattern, a multiple colored appearance here. And when there is no septal defect, we can see a laminar flow or a clear flow or a unidirectional blood flow, giving us one color on color flow Doppler. So this is how the color flow Doppler will give us a confirmation about the septal defects, will give us a confirmation about valvular diseases. And not only that, it will help us to study the flow of direction of the flow of the blood. So in other words, this will help us, the Doppler studies helps us to know about blood flow parameters. Well, to simplify what the echocardiography is, I try to put that in a simple single video. It starts with it's not playing exactly. Okay, well, that video it's not playing. So to conclude, about the echocardiography. This is one of the most sensitive diagnostic tool, as I was talking about. There are various diagnostic tools to suspect and to confirm and to study the cardiac disease in pet animals, like ECG, X-ray, chest X-ray. Next comes is the echocardiography, and because of its wide ways of imaging technologies or the different modes that are present, we can study the various components of the heart, and we can even diagnose various acquired and congenital cardiac disease if it is properly practiced and applied in practice. So with this, I conclude, and I thank all the participants for your patience hearing in spite of certain technical difficulties. And I also thank Dr. Nilesh and Dr. Aditi Dikshit for your patience in rejuvenating the program several times. Thank you so much. Any questions can be discussed now.
Participants, they are requested to ask questions if they have any. Sir, there are a few questions. One of the question was, can we see heartworm
Yeah.
by this echocardiography? When
Yes,
we do
we can
echocardiography, can
yes,
we
yes.
see the?
Yes, we can see the heartworm present
Yes.
present in these chambers of the heart. The heartworms are usually present on the right atrium, and they're also present in the pulmonic vessel, the pulmonic vessels. So we call that as a Cabell syndrome,
Yes.
which can be clearly seen when we apply this echocardiography. But is less, or I have not come across. But yes, definitely, echocardiography helps to identify and diagnose heartworms.
Yes. There's a question from Ani
Your voice unclear.
Garg. Most of the time, IBS and yeah, most of the time. Am I audible now, sir?
Yeah. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes. You can. You are. Go ahead. Yes, you can. Hello.
The dimensions then.
Hello.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yes. 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 Go ahead, Dr. Aditi.
Yes. How can we measure the dimensions if the interventricular septum and left ventricle are asynchronous?
How can we measure the dimensions?
The dimensions.
Yeah.
If the interventricular septum and left ventricle are asynchronous.
Asynchronized. If there is no
Yes.
synchrony, you mean? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. 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 It all depends upon how the image is taken exactly. As I was talking about, if you recollect that image, what I have shown, the left ventricle should be sliced exactly from the middle of the left ventricle, slicing through in between the papillary muscles. It should be exactly from the middle. If you take that M mode image, there will be always a synchrony between the interventricular septum and the posterior wall. But sometimes when there is asymmetric contractions of the interventricular septum, certain disease conditions like mitral valve disease, etc., there will be definitely asynchrony between the interventricular septum and the posterior wall. So what all we require is, like, we need to go through the different thickness of the measurements between. So you can take the interventricular septum at endodiastole. From there, you go down and take the measurement of the left ventricular lumen at the endodiastole. Yes, your point is, like, if that is not coinciding with the same synchrony of the posterior wall here, forget about it, don't worry. Imaginary line, you draw an imaginary line, you can take that. But nowadays we have machines available. Previous machines, like if you start at one point, interventricular septum here, and then straight away you have to come down the left ventricular lumen, and here the posterior wall thickness. These were the previous machines. Now what we have the machines is like we can measure the interventral septum here, and if there is no synchrony between these two, you can move this from here. You can move to this point and you can go for the thickness lumen measurement, and then you can go for the posterior wall measurement. But if there is no synchrony between these two, if your machine is not compatible to move the cursor from point to point, you can take a rough estimates and you can draw an imaginary line where the diastolic and the systolic phase is coming, and from there you can take the measurements. That's the only thing you can do.
Oh. Yeah, thank you, sir. One more question from Chakravarti R. Please explain about treatment response and variations in ejection fraction.
Okay. Actually, we were talking about only 50% of echocardiography here in this presentation. I have some more thing and some more information which I actually preserved to discuss that in your next coming up webinar, where we are talking about the diagnosis and management of cardiovascular disease. So there we will be discussing about the various disease conditions and how we diagnose it and how they will be managed and how this ejection fraction and fraction shortening, everything is going to be changed. Will be discussed in next webinar. More detail.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. One more question from Yeru Subbu. Where to place the sample volume to measure isovolumic relaxation time?
Yeah. Sample volume should be measured. Isovolumic. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible. Continue, sir.
Hello.
Dr. Satish?
Yes,
sir, you can continue.
Yes. The question is where to measure this isovolumic relaxation time, right?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You got it right.
Yeah, it is to measure these things, certain things actually, we have to correlate this with this ECG. Actually, echocardiography should also be correlated with continuous ECG. So if we have, if you are taking an echocardiography and if we have a graph below the ECG graph, then these certain things will be very much clear for us to identify where to be taken care. This is actually taken care when the cardiac cycle, one cardiac cycle is complete and the next cycle is about to start. So this is this will be decided if we have a subsequent ECG graph below along with this echocardiographic images. Okay, so but in general, this will be taken when the first cycle is complete and the second cycle is about to start. We decide this based upon the ECG graph.
Okay, one more question, sir. How does vegetative endocarditis looks like in echocardiography? Probably this you may take in the diagnosis and treatment webinar.
Yeah, that's what in this next webinar we'll be discussing, but it looks like in different abnormalities. There will be hyperechoic thickening of the metal walls and change in the shape of the metal walls. These things will be discussed in next webinar.
Ajay Khanvilkar has asked whether echocardiograph is cost effective.
Yeah, when it comes to the cost, yes, definitely the machine will be too costly, but nowadays we have a portable machines also, which start from about some 4 or 5 lakhs onwards. Maybe high end may reach up to 20-30 lakhs. But if you are a starter, if you are a learner, if you are going to start this practice, you can start it with 4 to 5 lakhs of machine that are available in market.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Now the questions are almost to present a vote of thanks on behalf of. Over to you, Dr. Nilesh. Dr. Neeraj.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Neeraj.
Yes.
Dr. Neeraj Srivastava.
Yes, I am audible.
Yeah,
Hello.
yes, Dr. Neeraj, yes.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
I would like to thank Dr. Satish Kumar,
Yes.
Professor
Yes.
and University Head, Department of Medicine, Veterinary College, Hyderabad, for sharing all his knowledge and skill related to echocardiography. I am sure all the participants, students and faculty alike must have hugely benefited from this webinar, which was all through a very practical approach. The PPT was very beautifully and painstakingly prepared. I wish to thank our Dean Sir also, Dr. S.S. Tomar Sir, for providing the encouragement and opportunity for this webinar. I am also thankful to Dr. Nilesh from Duvas Hisar for coordinating the webinar so patiently. And of course, I thank all the 200 plus participants who remained in the webinar in spite of some technical issues. On behalf of organizing committee, I once again express my apology for the initial technical glitch. So thank you once again to one and all. Stay at home, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neeraj. I, on behalf of the organizing committee, our college, our university, we once again thank Dr. Satish, Dr. Nilesh from Luvas for his help and cooperation all the way. Thank you so much, Dr. Neeraj, Dr. Nilesh, Dr. Satish, and everyone out there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all the organizers. Thank you, Dr. Aditi, Dr. Nilesh. It's really, I'm little, embraced to say that you people are waited for 1 hour because of these technical issues. But I hope you all understood. These are all not man-made, but still beyond this, all and above, we have completed this very successfully. And thank you so much for your patience hearing, all the participants and all the organizers.
Yes, sir, we can understand there is. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Satish
Thank you
sir.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditi madam.
Thank you, sir.